The Galactic Council's hall was huge and shimmering, full of representatives from hundreds of species across the galaxy. Each representative had their own seat in the amphitheater, their colorful skins and strange shapes creating a living rainbow. It was a rare sight to see so many aliens from so many worlds together in one place. The reason for their gathering: the newest species to join the interstellar community, humans. On a large screen at the front, a holographic image of Earth spun slowly. Beside it was a human image, a tall, somewhat frail-looking figure in simple clothing. The council members couldn't help but exchange amused glances as they looked at it. Whispers and chuckles filled the hall. A blue-scaled alien with long, snake-like limbs leaned towards his neighbor, a creature with soft fur and large eyes. They looked so primitive. Not a scale, not a claw. How do they even survive? The furry creature chuckled back, its eyes twinkling with mischief. Barely, I'd assume. They can't even travel beyond their own tiny planet without those ridiculous, sputtering ships. I bet they struggle just to survive their own seasons. As the laughter spread through the crowd, the Celeran ambassador observed quietly from his seat. The Celerans were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, wise and cautious. Ambassador Vakros was an elder among them, with silver-tipped tendrils framing his face. Unlike the others, he didn't join in the laughter. Instead, his eyes focused sharply on the image of Earth and the human. Vakros had learned over centuries to not underestimate the small or the unknown. An alien official with a thin beak and bright green feathers stepped forward to the central podium. His voice was high-pitched, and it carried easily across the hall. Members of the Galactic Council, today we discuss Earth's newest sapient species, humans. Despite their intelligence, they are vastly behind in technology, knowledge, and strength. More laughter erupted. A powerful reptilian representative stood up, its long tail swishing. Why are we wasting time on these frail beings? It hissed, baring its teeth in a smirk. They would last mere days on a true planet like ours. Ambassador Vakros couldn't stay silent anymore. He lifted a tentacle and spoke in a calm but firm tone. Have we learned nothing from history? Many species we once dismissed have risen to power. Shouldn't we at least observe them more carefully? The hall quieted for a moment, but then the laughter grew even louder. Another council member sneered. Careful, Vakros, or the humans might hear your warning and think they have a chance. This set off another wave of snickers. Vakros took a deep breath. I urge you all to show caution. They have a curiosity and adaptability that is unusual. Yes, they are behind us in technology, but their learning is fast, and they seem willing to risk much for discovery. The council official waved a dismissive wing. We don't need to fear a species that still uses combustion engines and primitive metal ships. They are no threat. Finally, to add to the council's entertainment, they proposed a test for the humans. The official announced it with a mischievous glint in his eye. Perhaps we should set a small challenge for these newcomers. Let's see if they can survive on Vabrak Prime. It would be a suitable demonstration of their skills. Vabrak Prime was infamous across the galaxy for its hostile environment and dangerous wildlife. Many advanced species had tried and failed to settle there, driven back by the planet's violent storms, toxic atmosphere, and deadly creatures. Even the strongest species had only lasted a few weeks on Vabrak before retreating in defeat. The hall erupted in cheers and applause as the council approved the challenge, fully expecting the humans to fail miserably. After all, if even they, the superior species, struggled on Vabrak Prime, how could a primitive race of Earth ever survive? It would be a humiliating defeat, one that would keep the council amused for ages. As the meeting concluded, Vakros left the hall quietly, his heart heavy. He hoped he was wrong, but he couldn't shake a strange feeling. Perhaps, just perhaps, the council was making a terrible mistake. Word of the Galactic Council's challenge soon reached Earth, where leaders, scientists, and soldiers alike gathered to discuss it. The council had selected the deadliest planet they knew. Vadrak Prime. No species had been able to last long there, and the aliens believed that humanity would fail even faster. Earth's leaders understood that this challenge was meant to humiliate them. They were expected to stumble, retreat, and prove themselves unworthy of any respect in the galaxy. But humanity didn't back down. Instead, they accepted the challenge, determined to prove their worth. A small but diverse team was assembled. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, and survival experts, each ready to face the brutal conditions of Vadrak Prime. They called themselves the Vadrak Expedition. As they prepared, they studied everything known about the planet. They saw images of the massive storms that tore across its landscapes, read about the acid rains that burned through anything left unprotected, and listened to the warnings about the dangerous creatures that roamed the land. "Are you sure we can do this?" Captain Sarah Mendez, the team's leader, asked her mission control during one of their final briefings. "Yes," replied Dr. Liam Carter, an experienced scientist on the team. "We know it's dangerous, but we also know something the Council doesn't understand about us. Humans adapt. We might not have the strongest tech, but we faced harsh environments before, and we learned quickly." The team left Earth in a basic but reliable spacecraft. It wasn't as advanced as the ones used by other species, but it was sturdy and well-suited for the journey. As they traveled through space, they knew that countless alien eyes were watching, eagerly awaiting their failure. When they finally reached Vadrak Prime, the crew couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. The planet looked almost alive, with roiling storm clouds that flashed with lightning and landscapes covered in strange, twisted plants. The air outside their ship was toxic, filled with gases that could melt their lungs if they breathed it in directly. "All right, team," Captain Mendez said, her voice calm but firm. "This place is worse than anything we've seen before, but we're here to survive. Let's show them what humans can do." The first day on Vadrak Prime was all about survival. The team set up their initial base, a small reinforced shelter that they built on a high plateau to avoid the worst of the planet's creatures. They had come prepared with tools and equipment designed to withstand Vadrak's extreme conditions. Solar panels were set up to collect energy during the brief periods of sunlight that broke through the thick, stormy clouds. They worked tirelessly, setting up water filters to make the acidic rain drinkable and creating barriers to keep the local wildlife away. Every hour brought new challenges. One moment, they had to deal with electrical storms that threatened their equipment. The next, they faced strange, predatory creatures with razor-sharp claws and thick scales. On the third day, as a toxic storm raged outside, Dr. Carter observed something strange. "These storms seem to follow a pattern," he said, studying data from their sensors. "If we learn the rhythm, we might be able to predict when and where they'll hit." Using this information, the team was able to adjust their routines, working in bursts to avoid the worst weather. Their progress was slow but steady. The aliens watching from afar, expecting the humans to retreat by now, were surprised. These primitive beings were lasting longer than expected. But surely, they thought, the humans would soon falter. Weeks passed, and the humans were still there, adapting day by day. They had begun to tame some of the local creatures, using food to create alliances with smaller animals who warned them of nearby dangers. They learned to turn the strange flora into makeshift materials, creating stronger barriers and finding ways to protect themselves from the storms. Back on Earth, the human population followed their journey with intense pride. For the first time, they felt like they were fighting not just for survival, but for the respect of the entire galaxy. As news of their progress reached the Galactic Council, alien leaders began to realize that their plan to humiliate humanity might have backfired. "They're lasting longer than expected," one council member murmured, watching live footage of the humans. "How are they doing this?" Ambassador Vakros, the wise Celeran who had advised caution from the beginning, simply watched in silence, a faint glimmer of approval in his ancient eyes. He, more than anyone, sensed what the others were beginning to fear. Humanity was more than just another species. They were resilient, clever, and above all, relentless. And as the humans settled deeper into Vedrak Prime, they prepared to take their place among the stars, whether the Council liked it or not. The human team's progress on Vedrak Prime was nothing short of astonishing. While the Galactic Council had expected them to retreat or perish within days, Captain Sarah Mendez and her team had not only survived but were thriving. Their base was now a sturdy fortress, with walls made from marine. The area were no longer a surprise. The team had mastered the timing, scheduling their outdoor activities during the planet's brief calm periods. Every step the team took was a learning experience. Dr. Liam Carter had been studying the planet's creatures and plants tirelessly, using his findings to craft tools, medicines, and even new kinds of food. They discovered that certain plants, when boiled, neutralized the acid rain, turning it into safe drinking water. Some smaller creatures, which had once been a threat, had even become allies, warned off by the scent of human food or lured to help with clever baiting techniques. But the human success had not gone unnoticed by the Council. In the Galactic Council chambers, alien leaders watched, growing more disturbed each day. These primitives were succeeding where far more advanced species had failed. The Council members couldn't believe it. How could humans, with their outdated technology and weak bodies, be winning against a planet as hostile as Vedrak Prime? "This is impossible," hissed Ulnak, a tall, scaly creature from a powerful warrior species. "They're supposed to be weak. If they conquer Vedrak Prime, they'll become a threat to the Council's authority." Other Council members nodded in agreement. Their laughter had long since faded, replaced with a growing sense of dread. They couldn't understand it. Humanity was proving to be far more resilient than anyone could have imagined, and if they succeeded on Vedrak Prime, it could inspire other weaker species to rise and challenge the Council's rule. With fear taking root in their minds, the Council decided to take drastic action. A coalition of some of the strongest alien species volunteered to send a small fleet to Vedrak Prime, with orders to destroy the human outpost. This was supposed to be a quiet operation, quick and brutal. They'd remove the human presence on Vedrak Prime and erase any record of their achievements. When Captain Mendez and her team saw the alien ships entering Vedrak's atmosphere, they knew they were in serious trouble. They had only basic weapons and no backup. But turning back was not an option. "Looks like the Council is scared," Mendez said, narrowing her eyes at the sight of the ships in the sky. "Good. That means we're doing something right." The team quickly put their plans into action. They'd studied Vedrak's terrain well, and they knew its dangers better than any outsider. Using makeshift traps, they rigged the ground around their base with explosives and camouflage barriers. They also set up lures to attract the native wildlife towards the incoming alien forces. The first wave of attackers landed, and within minutes, the harsh reality of Vedrak Prime hit them. Acidic rain poured down, and enormous beasts roamed, targeting anything that moved. Unprepared for the planet's dangers, many of the alien soldiers were quickly overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the humans used guerrilla tactics, striking from the shadows and blending into the planet's unpredictable landscape. One by one, the alien ships were disabled. The creatures of Vedrak Prime, lured by the sounds of battle, turned their rage against the intruders. Captain Mendez's team fought with everything they had, using traps, the environment, and even their own determination to fend off the attackers. Dr. Carter used his knowledge of the native plants to create smoke screens that threw off the alien sensors, adding to their confusion. Hours later, the alien coalition retreated, leaving their wounded behind. The Council's forces had suffered a humiliating defeat, and word of the humans' victory spread rapidly. Rumors circulated across the galaxy. Humanity, the so-called weak species, had defeated some of the most advanced forces in the galaxy using only their wits and resourcefulness. Back on the Council's homeworld, the members were in shock. Humanity's unexpected resilience and the defeat of their own forces shook the Council's confidence deeply. The laughter that had once filled the chambers was now replaced with worried silence. It was becoming clear that humanity wasn't simply a species to be mocked and dismissed. They were a force to be reckoned with. As Captain Mendez and her team patched up their wounds and rebuilt their defenses, they knew they had won a small victory. But the real fight was far from over. They had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of, but they were also aware that the Council would not let this defeat go unanswered. In the silence of their base, Mendez looked at her team, her eyes filled with determination. "We're not done yet. If they come back, we'll be ready." The victory on Vedrak Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Word reached not only the planets within the Galactic Council's territory, but also those on its edges. Weaker species that had long lived in fear and oppression by the more powerful Council races began to see hope in humanity's success. If these primitive humans could face the Council's forces and win, then perhaps there was a chance for others too. On Vedrak Prime, Captain Sarah Mendez and her team continued to strengthen their base. The last battle had taken its toll on their resources and energy, but they had gained a powerful sense of confidence. Every day they spent on Vedrak Prime was another day of proving to themselves and the galaxy that they weren't to be underestimated. As they patched up their defenses and set new traps, Dr. Liam Carter noticed a small blinking light on their makeshift radar. "Captain," he said, pointing at the screen, "we've got company again." Mendez leaned over to look at the radar. This time, the signals weren't just from a single alien fleet. "Looks like the Council's sent reinforcements," she said, her face set in a grim line. "And they've brought backup." The Council wasn't about to let humanity's victory go unpunished. They had sent not one but 3 powerful warships, each brimming with advanced weaponry, and commanded by some of the most experienced military leaders in the galaxy. This was a full-scale attack meant to crush the humans once and for all. But Captain Mendez and her team didn't panic. They had survived Vedrak Prime itself. They could survive this too. "We have something they don't, Captain," Dr. Carter said, adjusting his glasses with a grin. "We know this planet better than they do. Vedrak Prime itself is on our side." Mendez nodded, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. "Let's make them work for every inch." The team sprang into action, setting traps in key locations and programming drones to act as decoys. They activated sensors around their perimeter that would signal if any aliens got too close. With limited weapons, they relied on the planet's natural dangers: the acid rain, the deadly wildlife, and the treacherous landscapes. They knew that if they could draw the Council's troops into the open, Vedrak Prime itself would take care of the rest. When the Council's ships landed, the alien soldiers approached cautiously, knowing that the humans had already proven to be clever and dangerous. But they were not prepared for the harsh conditions of the planet. Almost immediately, the acidic air began to corrode their equipment, and the raging storms damaged their sensors. As the Council's forces marched toward the human base, they were met with ambushes from hidden traps and strange creatures that the humans had managed to repel. The alien soldiers tried to push forward, but every inch of land became a battle against both human defenses and Vedrak Prime itself. The humans struck from the shadows, using quick, unpredictable attacks. Captain Mendez, armed with only a basic rifle, led her team through dense jungles and rocky terrain, taking advantage of every opportunity to disrupt the Council's forces. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter used his knowledge of the planet's flora to create blinding smoke screens and chemical distractions that sent the aliens into disarray. The Council soldiers, who had come expecting an easy victory, quickly found themselves overwhelmed and disoriented. The planet's deadly creatures, drawn to the sounds of battle, began attacking the alien forces. Vedrak Prime was relentless, and the human team knew how to survive its wrath. The Council soldiers, however, did not. Finally, after hours of fighting, the Council's forces began to retreat, their numbers decimated, their leaders defeated. The once powerful warriors had been brought to their knees, undone not only by the humans, but by the very planet they had hoped to conquer. Back on their base, Captain Mendez and her team watched the alien ships flee into the sky. The humans were battered and exhausted, but victorious once again. The Galactic Council's attempt to remove them had failed, and the message was clear: humanity was here to stay. For the first time, the Council was truly afraid. Their attempt to crush humanity had instead made them a symbol of strength and resilience. Across the galaxy, weaker species began to whisper tales of human courage, and the Council's reputation started to crumble. As the team regrouped and prepared for whatever might come next, Captain Mendez looked out over the alien landscape of Vedrak Prime, feeling a deep sense of pride and purpose. They had proven that humanity wasn't just a weak, primitive species to be ignored. They were adaptable, unbreakable, and they would survive, no matter the cost. The Galactic Council was in chaos. The human success on Vedrak Prime had shocked even the most powerful alien leaders. For centuries, the Council had ruled without question, maintaining their control by force and intimidation. Now, humanity's defiance was inspiring others. Messages from distant planets began pouring in, small signs of resistance against the Council's oppressive rule. For the first time, the Council felt vulnerable. On Vedrak Prime, Captain Sarah Mendez and her team worked tirelessly, unaware of the ripple effect their survival was creating across the galaxy. They were focused on one goal: ensuring their base could withstand anything the Council might throw at them next. Each team member had become an expert in survival on the brutal planet, learning to use Vedrak Prime's resources to improve their defenses and stay alive. "Captain, look at this," Dr. Liam Carter said one morning, holding a strange device he had crafted from local materials. "It's a signal amplifier. We might be able to send out a distress call to Earth or even some of the other species who might want to resist the Council." Mendez considered it carefully. "If we're going to broadcast a message, it needs to be more than a distress signal. We need to show the galaxy what's possible. Let's let them know that if we can survive, they can too." Over the next few days, the team recorded messages, each member speaking about their struggles, their victories, and their determination. They shared footage of their defenses, their alliances with some of Vedrak's creatures, and their relentless drive to survive. When they were done, Dr. Carter programmed the amplifier to send the message out in all directions, hoping it would reach anyone willing to listen. The signal spread across the galaxy, reaching planets both within and beyond the Council's influence. The message showed not only the courage of humanity, but also their message of hope and resistance. For countless beings under the Council's rule, it was the sign they'd been waiting for. Humanity had become a symbol of defiance. Days later, as the humans continued their work on Vedrak Prime, an unexpected signal came through on their radar. Mendez and her team rushed to the control room, staring in shock at the screen. Ships were approaching, but these were not the Council's warships. "Who are they?" asked Lieutenant Tom Jackson, a soldier on the team. Dr. Carter leaned forward, studying the signals. These are ships from other species, ones we've never encountered before." The first ship landed nearby, and a group of alien delegates emerged. They were from various species, each representing planets that had suffered under the Council's oppression. With cautious but hopeful expressions, they approached the humans, offering symbols of peace. They had come to seek an alliance, inspired by humanity's resilience. Captain Mendez greeted them warmly, her heart swelling with pride. The humans shared stories with their visitors, describing their battles on Vedrak Prime and how they had used courage and ingenuity to survive. The aliens, in turn, shared tales of their own struggles against the Council, exchanging strategies and ideas for resisting the oppressive rule. Together, they formed a loose alliance, vowing to stand by each other. For the first time, these oppressed species had hope. If humanity, with its limited resources, could survive on Vedrak Prime and defy the Council, perhaps they could too. They left Vedrak Prime with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying humanity's message of courage back to their own people. When word of this alliance reached the council, panic spread through their ranks. The powerful leaders who had once laughed at humanity were now terrified. If these alliances continued to grow, they would soon face resistance on multiple fronts. The council realized that they had created a powerful symbol, one that was now turning the galaxy against them. But the council was not ready to surrender. Desperate to maintain their rule, they began to plan their next move. They knew they had to destroy humanity, once and for all, to restore their dominance. Meanwhile, back on Vedrak Prime, Captain Mendez and her team prepared for what they knew would come. They had survived against the odds, but the fight was far from over. Now, they were no longer just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every species in the galaxy that sought freedom. As Mendez looked up at the stars, she saw not just enemies but potential allies, each one inspired by their stand. She knew that humanity had sparked something unstoppable, a flame that even the mighty Galactic Council would struggle to extinguish. "Let them come," Mendez said, her voice steady and unwavering. "We're ready." The Galactic Council was furious. The human alliance with other oppressed species threatened the Council's control over the galaxy. In their desperation, they sent out their most powerful war fleet, a massive armada armed with the deadliest weapons and the fiercest soldiers from all over the Council's territories. This time, they weren't just coming to defeat humanity, they were coming to erase them completely. On Vedrak Prime, Captain Sarah Mendez and her team could see the vast fleet approaching from the sky. The atmosphere grew tense as the human team prepared for what could be their last stand. They were outnumbered and outgunned, and everyone knew it. But turning back was not an option. They had ignited hope across the galaxy, and they knew they were fighting for more than just themselves. "Captain, I've analyzed their flight path," Dr. Liam Carter said, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're coming straight for us, no doubt about it." Mendez nodded, her face resolute. "Then let's make them fight for every step. If they want a war, they'll get one." The human team sprang into action, each member taking their positions around the base. Over the months, they had strengthened their defenses with traps, barriers, and everything Vedrak Prime could provide. They knew every inch of the terrain, every hiding place, and every natural hazard, and they planned to use them all to their advantage. As the alien fleet began its descent, the first wave of soldiers emerged, their weapons gleaming under the strange light of Vedrak Prime's sun. But they weren't prepared for the traps that awaited them. Hidden explosives detonated underfoot, scattering the alien forces and creating chaos. The acid rain started to fall, and the Council's soldiers, unprepared for Vedrak's harsh climate, struggled to protect their equipment as it began to corrode in the toxic air. The humans attacked with precision, striking quickly and then retreating into the dense landscape. They knew they couldn't face the enemy head-on, so they used hit-and-run tactics, blending into the shadows and using the land itself as their weapon. Mendez led the charge, her rifle steady, her movements sharp and calculated. She inspired her team to fight harder, to believe in their cause. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter coordinated their defenses, using every bit of scientific knowledge he had gathered on Vedrak Prime to create distractions and barriers. He had discovered that certain plants emitted toxins when burned, creating thick clouds of smoke that interfered with the alien soldier sensors. He set up smoke screens, which disoriented the enemy, buying the humans precious time. The battle raged on for hours. Wave after wave of alien soldiers advanced, but each one met fierce resistance. The Council's soldiers, who had once mocked humanity, now found themselves in a brutal, desperate fight against a foe they had vastly underestimated. As night fell, the Council deployed their final and most feared weapon, a colossal, multi-legged machine designed to break through any defense. The machine, known as the Devourer, marched toward the human base, crushing anything in its path. The sight of it filled the human team with a brief moment of dread, but Captain Mendez quickly rallied her team. "Remember, this isn't just our fight," she said firmly. We're standing up for everyone who needs freedom. This is our moment. The humans set their last traps, guiding the devourer into a narrow valley they had prepared for such an attack. Dr. Carter activated a set of explosives placed along the edges of the valley, triggering a massive landslide. Rocks and debris rained down on the devourer, damaging its armor. The machine struggled to continue, its legs slowed by the fallen rocks. But the humans weren't done. Using their last bit of ammunition, they aimed at the machine's weak points, targeting joints and exposed cables. After a series of precise shots, the devourer's legs gave way, and it collapsed with a deafening crash, sending a shockwave through the ground. The remaining Council forces, witnessing the defeat of their most powerful weapon, began to retreat, their morale shattered. They had come to Vedrak Prime expecting to crush the humans, but instead they had suffered a devastating defeat. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly across the galaxy, reaching every corner where oppressed species were waiting for a sign of hope. As the dust settled and the alien ships fled back into the sky, the human team gathered together, weary but triumphant. They had defended their ground against impossible odds, proving that humanity's spirit could not be crushed. With the Council's defeat fresh in their minds, Captain Mendez knew the fight wasn't over. But now they had allies across the stars, and together they were ready to build a new future, one where no one would have to live in fear. The news of the Galactic Council's defeat on Vedrak Prime spread faster than anyone had imagined. Across the galaxy, planets under the Council's rule erupted in celebration, and the story of humanity's resistance inspired countless others. In a matter of weeks, small rebellions broke out on distant worlds, and beings of all kinds rose up against their oppressors. The Council, once seen as an unshakable power, was now on the defensive, struggling to keep control. On Vedrak Prime, Captain Sarah Mendez and her team watched the events unfold from their small base. Their victory had become a rallying cry for freedom, and messages of gratitude and alliance poured in from other planets. Each message reminded them that their struggle had sparked something far bigger than they had ever expected. One morning, as Captain Mendez and her team gathered for their daily briefing, their radar picked up several signals approaching the planet. Unlike the hostile fleets from before, these signals were different. They were friendly. Soon, ships from various species landed near the human base, bringing representatives from planets all over the galaxy. Some were leaders of new alliances, others were ordinary beings who had come to show their support. An elder from a planet that had suffered under the Council's rule stepped forward, bowing his head to Captain Mendez. "Captain, you and your people have given us courage we thought we had lost," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "We stand with you now, as you stood for all of us." Mendez felt a deep sense of pride as she looked around at the gathered crowd. They represented so many worlds, each one different, yet united by the same purpose: freedom. She knew this alliance was something the Council could never have predicted, something no amount of force or intimidation could destroy. With Dr. Liam Carter's help, they organized a meeting with the new allies, discussing strategies to weaken the Council further. Dr. Carter shared what he had learned about Vedrak Prime's harsh environment, explaining how they had used the planet's natural defenses to their advantage. Other species added their own knowledge, sharing tactics and technologies that had been hidden under the Council's rule. As they planned, the galaxy itself began to change. The Council, desperate to maintain control, deployed more forces to key planets, but their power was weakening. The Council's armies, once feared across the stars, were now spread thin, and they faced resistance wherever they went. The alliance of free species, inspired by humanity's stand, grew stronger with each passing day. Back on Vedrak Prime, Captain Mendez and her team knew that while they had sparked the revolution, the real victory would require every allied planet to stand firm. They would each need to fight their own battles, to resist the Council's control in their own ways. Humanity had shown the galaxy what was possible, but now the galaxy itself had to rise. As the Alliance representatives prepared to return to their worlds, They turned to Captain Mendez with gratitude. "We will remember Vedrak Prime as the place where freedom was born," one delegate said. "You have given us hope, Captain. Now we will carry that hope to our people." When the ships lifted off, carrying the new allies back to their homes, the human team on Vedrak Prime felt a mix of pride and relief. They had set something unstoppable into motion, and they could finally see a future free from fear. As weeks turned into months, news arrived of the Council's steady decline. Planets once ruled with an iron fist were breaking free, pushing back the forces that had kept them in chains for so long. Humanity's survival had turned the tide, inspiring a wave of rebellion that swept across the galaxy. One evening, as the human team gathered outside their base, Captain Mendez looked up at the stars, feeling the weight of their journey. They had started as a small, isolated team, sent to survive on a hostile world. But now, they had become symbols of courage, the spark that had set an entire galaxy alight with hope. Dr. Carter joined her, looking out into the dark sky. "Think we'll ever see home again?" he asked, his voice soft. Mendez smiled, a glint of hope in her eyes. "Maybe one day," she replied. "But even if we don't, we've helped make something bigger than ourselves. And that's worth everything." As they stood together under the alien sky, the team knew that humanity had won something far greater than just survival. They had earned their place among the stars, not by conquering, but by standing firm, by refusing to be silenced, and by inspiring others to do the same. Vedrak Prime, once a symbol of death and despair, had become a beacon of hope. And as the galaxy moved toward a new dawn, humanity's courage would live on, carried forward by every planet that had found freedom. For the humans of Vedrak Prime, the journey had been long and brutal, but they had proven something undeniable: that no matter how dark the odds, the spirit to fight for freedom could never be extinguished. And as they prepared for whatever lay ahead, Captain Mendez and her team knew that they had forever changed the galaxy and earned the respect they had once been denied.